This is
Make It Plain.
Make It Plain.
MIP
With Masamela Matfumo.
Mark Thompson.
Make It Plain.
Get woke.
Ladies and gentlemen, as you know, we have the new president. Well, not so new. She's been there a few months, but new to us and not new to the struggle. President and Director Counsel of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. That would be our dear sister, Janae Nelson. But in talking to Janae, ran across a really interesting story on the blog at NAACPLDF.org and wanted to talk to the author, and because it really is a great piece. First of all, let me let you know she's a senior staff writer at the Legal Defense Fund. When I tell you the title of this piece, you'll know why we wanted to talk, why this audience would want to hear from her. How the word woke went from black to bad. And we have senior staff writer Ashina Robinson here with us. Dear sister, welcome to Make It Plain.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. It's a pleasure to have you. So when this show, Make It Plain, was on Sirius XM radio, we were on in the evenings. And then we moved to a morning show in 2017. So it's been over 5 years now in February 2017. And so we coined, woke was out there, but we actually, for this show, and we kind of kept it, coined the hashtag Get Woke. Now, when we said it, everybody was fun, everybody liked it, it was a good thing. But since that time, as you know, and that's what your article is about, the term woke has become pejorative and negative. Kind of like, unfortunately, the word hotep was simply used to mean peace. Now that's become a bad word, but woke. Talk to us about that and how that happened. The other thing too that is fascinating, you know all about woke, folks. She's got a timeline of the use of the terminology historically and what it has meant. Well, why don't we start there? How did that word come to be, and how far back do we go with the word woke?
Certainly. And so, as I'm sure you know, right, Black people are just kind of like a font of creativity, especially when it comes to like language and slang. So we can't necessarily say we found the ultimate original first use of woke in the way it's used today. But what we can say for sure is that it's been used in the Black community, in the Black American community for several decades going back, as far back as at least the 1920s, right? And so Marcus Garvey, who, you know, if you're familiar with kind of Pan-Africanism and just the struggle for civil rights, when he was starting his agitation, you know, for Black people around the world, for members of the Black diaspora to kind of understand themselves as Black people and kind of reclaim their full humanity and all that type of stuff, their full power, his word that he used to push them. And there's a book that was published in the 1920s that kind of like captures a lot of what he said. He called for the global Black diaspora to wake up, right? And continuing from then over the decades, this word in the concept, in the sense of understanding where you come from as Black people, taking back your power as Black people, it showed up continually through the decades, right? So in the late 1930s, as one of the experts that I interviewed for my piece, Michael Harriot, let me know, there was a blues musician, a Black American blues musician. His name was Huddie Ledbetter, but he was known as Leadbelly. He wrote a song about a group of Black boys who were falsely accused of raping a white woman in Alabama, in Scottsboro, Alabama. The song is called Scottsboro Boys. And it's all about the story, right? The story of these boys and how they basically got caught up in this false accusation because they were in the South in this time. And at the end of the song, he gives like a spoken word. And he was like, I wrote this song so people can know, like, stay woke down there when you go down to Alabama, right? And one of the most brilliant pieces, not the most brilliant pieces, but one of the most poignant findings in writing this piece was this article by this Black American writer, William Melvin Kelly, from 1962. It's an essay that came in the New York Times, and the title was, If You're Woke, You Dig It. And this is 1962. And the piece, again, confronts this exact same phenomenon that we are seeing and that I was trying to unpack today in 2022. He's writing about this pattern of Black people coming up with language, coming up with slang, coming up with cool, just how Black people are, and how white people eventually catch wind of it, appropriate it, start using it, and invariably when they start using it, they start dulling or misconstruing or flattening the full meaning of it. And by the time they start using it, Black people kind of lose their luster for this word. And so the word takes on kind of this new life that is so far removed from the people it was originated from. But what I think is really interesting is how those words are not only taken away, but how they start being used against Black people, against the very people who originated them.
So, and thank you for that history. It's interesting, and this is not, to me, the most revolutionary word in our vocabulary. It's one of the words. Why do you think that, especially in this day and age, this one particular word has become such a threat to our enemies?
So what I pinpointed in my research for this piece and talking to those who I spoke to, including this one writer from Okayplayer, his name is Elijah Watson, and in 2007, I believe it was, or 2017, so about 5 years ago, he also wrote a piece about woke, right? Because woke had also already started coming into the mainstream beyond the Black community in about the mid 2010s. Like that's when it really started spreading outside of the Black community. But in my piece, right, his piece was capturing that spread. But no, again, as you said, the word woke has firmly and fully not only just spread, but it's become so ubiquitous and as a bad thing, right? As a derogative thing. And to me, what the timeline shows me that is that 2019, 1619 project, right? A project grounded on understanding the full scope of Black people's involvement in this country from its founding and how the treatment and the oppression of Black people plays out in America today. Then 2020, where we had this nationwide and even global racial reckoning, where people were taking to the streets in response to the horrific continuing murders of Black people that has happened, for years and years and years. But there was this kind of like tinderbox moment in 2020. There were massive protests. And again, part of the conversation there, which again was a breakthrough moment, was an understanding that this isn't just about this individual issue of police shooting Black people. This is about a larger structure of injustice, and we have to be aware of it to understand how to dismantle it. And something that was notable during that time, again, that was unique, is that for the first time in a while, a majority of non-Black people were in agreement that, hey, Black Lives Matter, first of all. That had never happened before. And two, that they were proactively seeking out knowledge to better understand how the system of injustice, the structural racism that we talk about works. And that activity is that's the very definition of woke, right? It's finding out the truth. It's going beneath. It's like woke, becoming awake to all the fullness of how everything works. And so to me, and you can see when you look at kind of the path of how these laws passed, it started with, then President Trump passing an executive order that specifically targeted the 1619 project, specifically targeted conversations in institutions that talked about racism, discrimination, those conversations that are, meant to kind of help dismantle it, try to lessen the effects of discrimination and inequality. He passed and he implemented an executive order that the Legal Defense Fund, filed lawsuits against to ban those conversations. And after Biden came into office, one of his first acts was to rescind that EO. But by that time, across the country, Republican legislatures were following suit. They were passing these laws that were basically mimicked after that order, which were banning certain conversation, limiting, restricting, censoring specific conversations about race, racism, gender equality, and sexual identity.
And as a matter of fact, LDF is also involved in the suit, I believe, against at least one of those laws in Florida, right? The DeSantis,
yes.
the Stop. Okay.
And the Florida law is almost one of the most egregious and one of the most transparent, right? And this is from Governor Ron DeSantis's kind of like mind, where their law is called Stop Woke. So it's very explicit in what it aims to do. And the bill itself, its provisions, right? it very, very stringently limits conversations, as I mentioned, about race, about structural racism, and in even the debates around this bill, where, people showed up and testified against it, including, Black Floridians, Black youth in Florida, especially, protested and said, no, this is going to harm what we're trying to do. We're trying to make our state less, inequitable. We're trying to make it fairer. We're trying to make it less racist, less harmful to Black people. So we don't want this law. The law was passed, and the law was passed with this kind of conversation around, we got to stop this wokeness. We got to stop this inclusion. We got to stop this conversation around structural inequities, right? So it's very, very clear that this is a targeting certain speech, and not only targeting certain speech, because in Florida, where most of our plaintiffs are Black, university professors, who are the people who are most likely to be teaching courses about African American history and things of that nature, their speech is more likely to be chilled by this law called Stop Woke.
Where are we? Are we making any progress on that suit?
That was recently filed, and I have to say too, right, I'm a writer, and so I write about our suits, but I don't file them. But we filed that recently, and we are also seeking a preliminary injunction to halt that while it works through the court.
Well, knowing LDF the way I know it, and I'm sure the two of us could speculate, I'm sure this falls under First Amendment at the very least. And, we look at all these other things that are taking, they don't, you're right, 1619 Project, they don't want us to have open and honest conversations about history. And that's devastating. I mean, we're not living in a society where people are going to be educated or learn anything if we can't have these kinds of discussions, are we?
Exactly. And you're right. You're right. It is devastating. And on a number of levels, right? Let's start with, maybe the youngest. Say, because a lot of these laws target conversations in K through 12 classrooms. Imagine, and it's not hard to imagine, and this has been the case for far too long, Black children, brown children, LGBTQI children, indigenous children. This is the type of law that's basically going further to erase them from the classroom, erase their lived experiences, erase their voices, erase their stories, their community's stories, the American stories. So it harms them. It harms other students. It harms white students, quite frankly, because one, they're not getting a full, honest, accurate education about the country that they live in, the world that they live in. And also research shows that when all students have this education that provides them kind of an inclusive understanding of, the diverse world, again, that we live in, like that's the world that we live in, it has benefits for all students. And then finally, like the loss of this kind of critical, truth from our conversations in the classrooms and from our public schools, the impact that will have on our democracy is quite frankly devastating, right? Because you need a citizenry that has a shared understanding of where we're coming from, of how things work, a shared understanding of everyone who makes up this country, this nation, to understand how to go ahead and make progress, how to make change, how to create the changes that they want to see. But if you're hobbled by this lack of information, or a lot of times straight up lies, right? They're literally trying to rewrite history, rewrite these factual stories. Then that lack of information is going to make it virtually impossible for us to change those structures, for us to change those things that are embedded in our systems. Because the tale that's being told now is that they don't exist, that they never happen. And so what is there to fix? And we know that there's always improvement to be made, right? We're saying that we want to be a more perfect union. That means that we are working towards becoming better, right? That is what we should be wanting to do as a people and as a nation.
But it also pulls the cover off the real agenda. Otherwise, the legislation would have been stop CRT. CRT was never being taught at this level. This is a graduate, it's a law school curriculum. It was never, so that, we're going to stop. You had somebody win the governorship in Virginia just off of that alone.
Yes.
So, but if it was CRT was over, why wouldn't you have a bill that says stop CRT? No, they use CRT to stop even whatever semblance of status quo.
Exactly.
And we know, folks, I know you know this too as well. A lot of the true history of people of color, diverse history, a lot of times if the school system is not promoting it or saying it explicitly, It's individual teachers who are doing it. And so this is how everyone gets targeted, whether it's in the school system curricula or whether it's individual teacher sharing more knowledge and information with these young people. This is a way to target everyone. It's not CRT. We don't want you to talk about even the basic fundamental things when it comes to history, even in Texas. Hillary Clinton ain't black, but I think they took out all the textbooks that had Hillary Clinton in the textbooks. So if they've taken her out, they're going to take out everything that we have. Just right now, they would have a law in a state like Florida where we can talk about this, what we're talking about right now, the history of the word woke, the history of Marcus Garvey as an ancestor. These are the type of things they don't want our young people to hear and to know about.
Exactly. And you touch on something really, really important, that it's this language game. They're playing with language. And a lot of it, again, it's like political gamemanship, right? It's about political fear mongering, like what works to kind of get people fearful and respond from that way. And so it's a lot of clouding what they're actually talking about. Michael Harriot, again, who I interviewed for this piece, he said something really, really, I think, very, very telling in my interviews with him. He said it's not as easy to say straight out as you're alluding to as well. Like ban Black people, like ban conversations of stop Black people, right? That's a little bit harder to get away with. But when you can cover that with a label that you have built up to mean whatever you want it to mean, you pull CRT out of these legal textbooks from grad school, and then you throw it into the national mainstream conversation, and you make everybody feel like this is this terrifying thing that is just soaking into like kindergartens, which is absurd, right? But when you build this like fear mongering around these words and these labels, and then you put what you want to underneath that, then you're able to get away with murder, And as you said, it's very individualized targeting with these broad restrictions. And one thing that makes it so cruel is how harsh the punishments are. For example, Florida's Stop Woke law, if, teachers are found to run afoul of this law, they can be fired. They can lose their tenure. And you know how critical that is, for tertiary level, like professors, the schools will lose state funding. So they are using taxpayer money hostage to control the speech, right? So, it's actually pretty terrible what's happening right now.
No, you're absolutely right.
Hey, I'm Andy. If you don't know me, it's probably because I'm not famous. But I did start a men's grooming company called Harry's. The idea for Harry's came out of a frustrating experience I had buying razor blades. Most brands were overpriced, overdesigned, and out of touch. At Harry's, our approach is simple. Here's our secret. We make sharp, durable blades and sell them at honest prices for as low as $2 each. We care about quality so much that we do some crazy things, like buy a world-class German blade factory. Obsessing over every detail means we're confident in offering a 100% quality guarantee. Millions of guys have already made the switch to Harry's, so thank you if you're one of them. And if you're not, we hope you give us a try with this special offer. Get a Harry's starter set with a 5-blade razor, weighted handle, shave gel, and a travel cover. All for just $3 plus free shipping. Just go to harrys.com and enter code FACE at checkout. That's harrys.com, code FACE. Enjoy.
Everybody loves a sequel, especially when it comes to the world's most comfortable shoe. Introducing the Allbirds Wool Runner 2, a next-level revamp of the cult classic. 7 years in the making, it's been completely reimagined for a game-changing fit and feel. With enhanced cushioning and super soft materials, the Wool Runner 2 delivers comfy all-day wear built for bliss. Visit allbirds.com and use code FRESH24 to score a free pair of socks with purchase. That's ALLBIRDS.com, code FRESH24.
Folks, we invite you to read, and we'll link to it as well, how woke went from black to bad. The Sheena Robinson's piece at the Legal Defense Fund website, NAACP. LDF.org. What's your next piece? You got anything else coming up that's going to be juicy and good?
Yes. So, as you said, like the next couple of months are going to be a lot for a lot of the things that we work on. And we also know the midterms are coming up. And so voting, right, is ever present in our minds as people at the LDF and for Black people in America. And the midterms already are just going to show a lot of what came up in the last couple of years in terms of like redistricting and gerrymandering and kind of this conversations about, who has the right to vote and whose votes are valid and And so we're going to be talking about a lot of that in some upcoming pieces for our original content platform.
Folks, we invite you to always check out NAACPLDF.org. Support the LDF. Be informed about what's going on in our struggle. The LDF, Thurgood Marshall's organization. It's the premier legal organization and the legacy organization in the civil rights struggle. You all already know me too, because I'm just meeting our sister before we started this interview. I talked to her, and you all hear the sound of her voice, so you know what we talked about. And then she's talking about our ancestor Garvey as well. So we we appreciate that. And God bless you, Sister Sheena Robinson. Thank you for joining us here on Make It Plain.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a good one.
You too. Thanks for getting woke and listening to Make It Plain. As always, perform an act of kindness on behalf of an elder or young person. Write a letter to a sister or brother who just so happens to find her or himself incarcerated. Offer libations to the ancestors upon whose sturdy shoulders we all now stand. And above all, give thanks to the God of your understanding by whatever name you call her and him. All God asks of us is that we give each other love. Thanks for giving MIP love. And please remember to subscribe and give us a 5-star rating. If all hearts and minds are clear, it has been made plain.